Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Into the Darkness, the show where we take a dive into the horror genre. I'm Steve Fitzgerald, and joining me today, as always, to discuss everything horror is my co-host and friend, Sara Lynham. Hello, Sara, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. Yes, it's me, Sara Lynham, vampire killer.
Hey, have you got a
wait, sorry.
Yeah,
take
we'll
take that mantle from somebody else.
Vampire
killer.
We're jumping ahead of ourselves. So this is actually a really, really special episode because we are entering the double digits of the show. This is episode number 10 of Into the Darkness. And you may be wondering, hang on, I'm joining for the first time. Well, you have, that's right, 12 other episodes to go back and watch because this is our 10th episode, but we have 2 other episodes as well, bonus episodes about some of the Friday the 13th films. And judging by what I just said, you'll know that I don't know math. We have 11 other episodes you can go back and watch immediately. And we've just finished our marathon run through the Chucky and Child's Play movies, all 7 of those, not including the remake. And we'll be heading to the Hellraiser franchise in a few episodes' time. But today, we had a request online to cover the film that we're going to cover today, and it's a film that I really, really love. I hope it's a film now, Sara, that you love, but we'll find out. We'll find out really soon. And that is Tom Holland's 1985 film Fright Night. But before we get there, just a couple of little news items because we don't want to stray too far from Chucky immediately. Don Mancini has announced that he's writing the next Chucky film, Sara.
Oh my goodness, I was so excited. It felt like this beautiful kind of feeling, having just finished watching all the films and feeling quite sad about it, to then find out, don't worry, that's not the end. And I'm like, I mean, I knew it wasn't anyway because of the TV series, but like knowing that there's another film coming, I think there's something like when something starts as film and that's kind of the core of its kind of personality and creation, it's nice to have the TV thing and to know that that's all part and that's all canon. But I just think there's something really special about the idea of being able to go into a cinema to watch it, because I haven't been able to do that for any of the films so far, and I'm like, oh, that's gonna be great. That's
really true, because I remember the first, sort of growing up and watching a lot of these films. Obviously I saw them on video because I couldn't go to the cinema. I was far too young to go to the cinema. So I do remember the first ones that I finally got to, go and see a franchise sequel in the cinema. And it feels really special, even if the film, so I'm thinking back to some of the ones that I saw, even if the film was one of the lesser films in that particular franchise, it was still a really cool thing to be able to do. New Child's Play, Chucky film rather, being written by Don Mancini, who's apparently also writing a haunted house film and working on a TV series with Jennifer Tilly. So we're separate from the Chucky universe. So pretty cool.
Oh, I feel spoiled. I love that. That's so good.
Yeah, well,
anyone who's listened to the episodes. Yeah. Anyone who's listened to our episodes from Bride of Chucky onwards, I just keep talking about how much I love Jennifer Tilly, so it's going to be, it does feel like an early birthday present for me, which is lovely.
Absolutely.
Well, I say early birthday present. The news is early birthday present.
The news is early birthday present. That's so cool. We also have coming out a little bit more news for us. The trailer for Passenger just dropped. Which is from the director of one of the I think the creepiest films I'm just looking at when this particular film came out, 2016. So in the last 10 years, So this is from director Andre Ovredal, and the film I'm mentioning is The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which I absolutely love. But the new film is Passenger, which looks super, super creepy. And we watched the trailer a little while ago. Sara, what did you think?
I thought it was really creepy. I think it had some really evocative kind of imaging in it, because I think you mentioned you watched a shorter trailer when you were in the cinema, but this one was like a 2.5 minute trailer, and there's a moment that I was when he was driving over a series of someone was driving over a series of bodies in a field, and I was just like, oh no, that was really like disconcerting, and also the seeing the same figure on the passing as they're trying to drive was just really
super
eerie.
creepy. So the trailer that I saw ended just after a particular scare in the trailer, which I guess would be wrong to reveal what it is, because I think it was super effective. And yeah, the second half with the moment that you mentioned I hadn't seen before, but I think it looks really good. I really, as I say, I really love the Autopsy of Jane Doe. Great idea. Sort of a single space horror, just set in one, not a room but a building, and I really, really love that. Andre's also directed some other other horrors, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, but I don't think any of them have sort of captured the sort of creepy excellence of the Autopsy of Jane Doe. But maybe Passenger is the one to come and maybe be even scarier than that film. We'll find out. And very quickly, some horror adjacent news. Not strictly horror, but I know we're huge FromSoft fans. We love Souls games, and the Elden Ring film, directed by Alex Garland, is currently going into production, which is wild. An Elden Ring film. I've always thought it would be really difficult to sort of transfer the way that FromSoft tells stories into anything other than the games, really, because they're so sort of the information's all there, but it's all quite cryptic and quite hidden. So how do you feel about that? Are you optimistic?
I'm excited for the idea of it. I've seen some stills of the like Church of Marika and stuff that they've built, which looks very cool. The world is so rich and large. The idea of doing a single film, I'm like, where are we going to go? Like, are we just going to focus on one area within the Limgrave kind of zone, or like are we sort of venturing into like something before the world of the game? It's just interesting to know where narratively they're going to sit things and what parts of it are going to be incorporated, because I think it's cool that there will be existing lore that they can use, and I guess there might be an element of if no one's ever played an Elden Ring game, they're going to have to, if no one's ever played a Soulsborne, if no one's ever played anything, they won't necessarily know that kind of cryptic kind of way that the story gets told, and whether or not that would translate to film. Kind of like what you were saying, I'm cautiously optimistic. I want it to be good. Like with most things that I like, I'm like, I hope that's good, because I want it to be good. I want it. Exactly. I want to enjoy it.
I think
I still remember. Oh no, I was just going to say, I still remember us literally staying up till midnight to play Elden Ring at launch. So that's the kind of level that we're both at in terms of like our love for the game and for these types of games. So I really hope it's good.
Yeah, definitely. I think Alex Garland's a really really good director. He's been saying how well he knows the game, how far, how much he's played the game. I think he spoke about what new game level he's on, plus. So, if, we'll see where we go. I think that the way with things like this is probably to, as you said, to sort of draw from this rich lore, but maybe tell a more sort of streamlined story, so that it doesn't become a greatest hits collection rather than anything else. But I'm sure that's not what they're aiming for. We'll see what happens. We'll see when Elden Ring releases at some point in the future. I've no idea when it's due to start filming. I know it's in production. So, without further ado, let's head off to a new film away from the Chucky franchise. But we're not without ties to Chucky and Child's Play, and not without more than one tie to Chucky and Child's Play as well, as we head off to 1985's iconic vampire movie, Fright Night. So this is a really special film for me. I think it was probably the first 18 certificate horror I ever watched. I have what I would consider a sort of a what do you call it, sort of formative text of horror films that I consider to be the, you know, my introduction to horror and to the horror genre, to horror films. And they would probably be the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the Monster Squad, which, you know, let me, you know, meet all of these sort of universal monsters in one fell swoop. And then Fright Night. I even distinctly remember when I was far too young, my dad saying to me, "Do you want to stay up and watch this vampire film tonight with me and your mum?" And me saying, "What, like Monster Squad?" And going, more of a sort of I guess it hardcore to a kid, you know, hardcore horror film, but really it's, you know, it's a very fun movie. It's not remotely horrid, you know, in a lot of ways. But that was Fright Night, and I was immediately sort of obsessed with it. What did you know going in to watch it for the first time?
So before having the suggestion on one of our YouTube videos, I had heard of the title, and that is it. So which is wild, like thinking about how many people know about it, how many people love it, how influential it is, and how influenced it is by you know, classic horror as well. I only knew that it had vampires because that was mentioned in the comment on YouTube. So so I didn't even know that it was going to be a vampire film. I feel like I'd seen the poster, the artwork for it before, and went, that looks incredible.
I'm so pleased you mentioned it. Yeah, because it is.
Yeah, it's so good, isn't it?
Extraordinary. Yeah.
It makes me want to have like a poster of that somewhere in my house, because that's very cool. Like it's such a, it captures the essence of the film really, really well, whilst also being like really like creepy looking, but in the right level of like fun. I just think it's a great poster for the film. It's beautiful. It's great.
I agree. I think it's one of my all-time horror posters, and you're so right when you say it sort of captures the tone, in that it captures the sort of horror, but a little bit fun, but a little bit I don't know, sort of. You also mentioned about sort of classic horror there, and that's actually something I was really thinking. We'll get into this soon because it's actually a whole thing I want to talk about, but that was something I really was looking at when I watched it again this time, and I feel like this is a film that manages to almost perfectly tread the line between the old and the new, and be able to do both of these things exceptionally well. So in terms of like sort of vampire films, or the monster of the vampire in general, you know, is it a sort of a horror monster that you gravitate towards, one that you sort of are always excited to experience?
Definitely yes. I was like, are you asking that as a question you already know the answer to? Like, you know,
I mean, I can assume, you know.
It's a safe assumption.
Yeah.
I grew up watching Buffy, so big fan of like the vampire as an idea. But having said that, I don't think I've seen a lot of the classics, so I still haven't seen Lost Boys. There's a few of the Draculas that I haven't seen. Trying to think what else. I have only seen Interview with the Vampire thanks to you. We went to see it at the BFI for my birthday last year, and I loved that. That was incredible. Like, wonderful. So good. And I think a couple of years ago, or maybe it was last year, I can't remember exactly when, Connor and I started doing a rewatch of Buffy with Angel alongside it. So I'd never watched Angel, and it took me a little while to get into Angel, just because I was such an avid Buffy fan. I was like, well, it's not the same, and like, so I that's probably the most. I'm trying to think if there's anything else really obviously vampiric that I've watched. Not off the top of my head that I can think of, but if you say something, I'll be like, oh yeah.
No, but Buffy's awesome. I agree with you as well, and would take it would take episodes to even begin to scratch the surface of how great and influential and Buffy is, and how I think sad a lot of people are feeling at the moment that the new Sunnydale series has been cancelled and appears that it won't ever be. I know everyone was really excited, but you never know what the future holds for Buffy, and hopefully we'll see something at some point. Same for me with this sort of creature. For me, to be honest, growing up, I think vampires. I know I showed an episode or so ago my Dracula scrapbook that is by the side of me right now, but vampires were like my big horror monster growing up, and really, thanks to mum and dad letting me watch the Monster Squad and Fright Night, but also because my grandparents would record Friday night Hammer double bills for me. And so that way I got to watch, Dracula, Prince of Darkness. I didn't see the first Hammer Dracula until going to the BFI, actually, when I first met Paul. It was one of the first things we went to do together, or maybe it was years in, I don't remember, but it was certainly one of the first times we went to the BFI together to see the first Hammer Dracula. And so this was a big monster for me growing up, and the vampires in this film were really my first proper, vampires that I grew to, love and be obsessed with. So, going to have our first link back to the Chucky franchise, the director of Fright Night is none other than Tom Holland, the director of Child's Play. And this was his the first film that he directed. It's not his first written film. He started out writing films, including films like The Beast Within, the really excellent Psycho 2 as well. Really, really great sequel that no one asked for, really. A film that you just can't imagine ever getting a sequel. And Tom Holland went and wrote an absolutely cracking sequel. Psycho 2. But here he is writing the script and directing for the first time, and we all know that he would just a few years later go on and direct and co-write the first Child's Play film. Did you know that going in, or was when his name popped up, we were like, oh, it's
no,
because I purposely didn't mention it.
That was a fun little moment when the credits were, flowing through in the opening sequence. I was like, oh, I know that name. How exciting. And then I was already pumped to watch it anyway, because that was not meant to be a play on words about pump, vampires, blood, hearts, etc. I was already excited to watch it because I heard there were vampires in it, let alone that it had a connection to Child's Play, and it feels like the perfect film to be watching after finishing with Chucky and his franchise for now.
It really does. And it's so what were your before we head into that opening moment and the opening crawling shot across the house and into the house, what were your impressions at the without going to narrative? Did you enjoy the movie is where I'm going with this? Did you have a good time watching this film?
Yeah, I absolutely did. I think it's super fun the whole way through. On Netflix it says that it's a comedy horror. I don't know if it's like a full comedy. It has great moments of levity in it, and nice little quirky little fun quips, but I think comedy is probably a little, for me it felt a little extreme to call it that. I just feel like it's I guess you have to put that because it's not just a pure horror. It's not meant to be entirely scary and without levity. So yeah, I feel like I thought based on that it was going to be more intentionally comedic, but yeah, it felt like it was more kind of situational comedy that was happening, and that is not meant to be that's more of a Netflix go and sort yourself out. I don't think that's the right classification than anything else. I think it was I think it's a perfectly fine way to explain it, but I think if I told someone else, if they said, "Oh, what genre would you say this is?" I'd say it's horror. It's a really fun horror film. Like, I wouldn't say it's a comedy horror, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it's, maybe you'd say there's sort of a horror with exactly that. Yeah, and I sort of, I guess that it gets the sort of, there are moments that are funny in it. It's definitely aims to make you laugh at times. I can definitely see where you're coming from. I think it doesn't, I guess what it is you sort of expect that in a comedy horror, that it won't be it'll only go so far into one of those two things, it will sort of try. Whereas this does feel like this is a horror film with as you say, moments of levity, with an element of fun to it. That this isn't a film that's there to make you feel bad or make you feel like you've watched something that you wish you hadn't seen. It's there to provide you with a really good time, scare you, and make you laugh every now and again. And I think that's I think I'd agree with that. So we start off as most things do at the beginning, and it sets its tone within, I think, the first second, really, which is that you see a shot of the moon and sort of what sounds like sort of a stock audio of a wolf howl. When we find out what it is in a minute, it definitely is a stock audio of a wolf howling. And it sort of says, here we are, creepy moonlight. There's a wolf. And we begin our sort of slow crawl across the house towards, what we find out in a moment is Charlie Brewster's window. And from the inside, we hear, really sort of, I don't know what the word is, stilted dialogue, this sort of, you look so beautiful in the moonlight. What are you looking at? All this kind of stuff. When that was happening, did you sort of go, oh, there must be like a sort of, it's sort of stereotypical old-fashioned horror scene playing out, or were you like, oh, the acting in this is going to end up being a little... What were your thoughts at first when you could hear that?
I didn't suspect that it was meant to be any sort of homage or like a sort of a classic scene. I was like, oh, okay, this is an interesting setup. I guess we'll ride this wave. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay.
Yeah,
we've watched things that have bad acting in it before, and it was okay.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, when you sort of see, and then when you do see the TV screen and you see, they've done such a good job of sort of these moments of making this feel like a proper, 80s bedroom watching late night horror movie scene. It's just perfect. And we also get our first glimpse here of Peter Vincent, who, as you say, vampire killer, and he holds the stake up backwards, which is such a silly gag, but it's just helping us sort of set the tone immediately, isn't it? Of what's going to happen here.
Absolutely. There's also you're talking about stock wolf sound. The kissing sounds are so unrealistic. They're just like.
It's
like, there you go. There's your kiss track. There you go.
Exactly. No, it is definitely that. In fact, that is I think more egregious than the wolf howl. It is just the fakest kissing sounds ever.
That's great.
But where there isn't fake kissing is in that bedroom away from the TV screen, where we meet Charlie, played by William Ragsdale, and Amy, played by Amanda Bierce, and they are they're very much kissing by the side of the bed, right? They're not. Is that right? They're not. They're not in the bed. Yeah, they're on the floor because they're they're quirky like that.
Well, because the bed means something else. The bed kind of like. Yeah. So we know it's fine. It's a safe to make out on the floor.
Yeah,
because there's no follow through on the floor, right?
There's no follow through on the floor. And that you're absolutely right there. I think that is definitely saying, this space over here is where things become more serious, and this is we're just kissing. And as the film is running through, Charlie's getting more passionate, and Amy's clearly not very comfortable with this. And in the end, he gets very grumpy, and they have this little tiff. And how did this whole moment sort of come across to you between the two of them? Because this is the first introduction to the characters, and obviously watching it, you know, I know where this film goes, but like for you, what were your immediate thoughts about this sort of conflict between the two of them?
I think like it's hard not to look at it through the lens of both an adult and someone in our time, where I kind of went, like he shouldn't be so demanding of her to go all the way, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is kind of part of a trope as well. So like I wasn't too upset by it. I think like, you know, it was, I think he says the line something along the lines of, oh, you know, we've been going together for over a year and all I ever hear is Charlie, stop. And I'm like, maybe you should look at yourself, Charlie.
Yeah, not
like,
not
maybe,
that, you know,
maybe.
If that's all you're ever hearing, you think that maybe the problem, you know, the calls are coming from inside the house, aren't they? Really?
Yeah.
But
exactly.
and you know, I think you know, this moment comes across as very, I think for the most part, very, you know, as you say, it's a bit tropey, but it's also, you know, sort of quite a sort of genuine moment, really, of a couple that are, you know, nervous, because as we find out in a moment, you know, or when, you know, the mood changes and she says, well, actually, you know, he's nervous, you know, by it, and also contextually not paying attention, which maybe we could read into a little bit as this film you know, goes on, and some of the subtext or indeed text of the film, but you know, I think you know, this I think what you get from both of the performances, not just here but throughout the whole film, I think they're lovely performances throughout the whole film, very, very genuine. And
definitely.
You know, William Ragsdale's Charlie does a great job, and Amanda Beers is just so such a sort of earnest performance as Amy, very, very sweet, very you know, you really root for her, I think, in the film.
Yeah, definitely. They're both absolutely lovely. And they seem very adorable as well. Like when you sort of see them together, you sort of like, okay, I don't want anything to happen to you because you look very precious and I want to be gentle here. But yes, I think it's a really nice way of building up this kind of innocence that finds strength in itself, and then it contrasts really nicely with your super evil characters and your sort of like moderately evil character, and then your sort of your sort of like bumbling fun character of Peter Vincent when he comes around, and it's just a nice little mix of all these different kind of vibes that then kind of work together in order to make the film. Just really lovely to watch, and even if it feels tropey at any point, like it always feels like that's intentional, and that's kind of part of kind of wanting to, you know, bring about a feeling of classic horror films, and sort of knowing that formulas work for a reason, and not shying away from that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and as we said earlier on, I think this film is so aware of the past, but also very interested in doing something new with total respect to what's gone before. You know, it never feels dismissive of anything. In fact, there's a moment I was going to talk about later on, but when there's a moment later where they're talking about how to make someone, without going into the plot of later, and how to make someone that's become a vampire human again. And they say if we you know, kill the head vampire, if you like, by dawn. And when they say, will that work? They say, well, everything from the movies has worked so far. You know, and normally when you do you know, a more current modern style film, that comes at the cost of dismissing even something awesome like Interview with the Vampire says, you know, crosses don't work. You know, this is a sort of old-fashioned idea about vampires that we don't wish to use here. And I really like that the conventions of the vampire, the classic sort of, if you like, Universal Hammer horror vampires, you know, the vampire monster being much older than that, of course, but the Hollywood vampire, as it were, all the conventions of that are really honoured here, and that they all stand true in that way. So Charlie and Amy have this, you know, this little bit of conflict here where, you know, she feels that he's pressurizing her, and then after this she sort of, takes a moment and decides that actually maybe this is the moment where they're going to take their relationship to the next level, and she gets onto the bed, and it's such a sort of I think you feel so much empathy for her here when she gets onto the bed and she's just got her bra on, and she sits there sort of tries to be confident for a moment, and then covers herself before she says to him, Charlie, I'm ready. And I really think even minutes into the film, you get who Amy is, and you get what the conflict is for her, and you really feel for her.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And it's a really nice setup for her, so that we get to see the way that she interacts with the world, but we already kind of I think we have an expectation of how it's going to be, and then it's really interesting to see where she ends up. Which we'll get to.
Yeah, it's quite a journey. Meanwhile, though, Charlie, rather than, after his initial, are you sure? The sort of, you can hear that little nerve in his voice where this, he's been putting on this pressure, but when it really comes to it, he's just a kid as well, really. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just been trying to, be assertive, because I guess that's what he feels is required of him as a guy. Maybe there's that sort of pressure for him as a guy to have gone there already. But out of the window, using his binoculars I'm sure, and throughout he uses binoculars as an homage, maybe to Rear Window, or maybe he's just a creep. I don't know. But I didn't have binoculars by my window as a kid. But
me neither.
Different times, I guess. He looks out the window and he sees two men at the abandoned house next door bringing a coffin through the basement doors there, and becomes very distracted by this. Tells Amy what's going on, but it is paralleled almost completely by the scene going on in the Peter Vincent film in the background. And Amy says, "What? Carrying a coffin on the moors, are they?" And it's a nice bit of parallel here, and. And quite rightly, she feels completely sort of humiliated and spurned, and storms out of the room.
Totally justified.
Absolutely.
Both of them, actually, because I'd also be really distracted by someone carrying a coffin next door.
I really appreciate that. I wasn't even going to get. And you're like, no, yeah. I mean, what he's doing is wrong, but equally, yes, Steve, remember there are two guys carrying a coffin next door. That is weird, okay? And I guess it is. It's not something you see every day, is it?
No, and I think I think it feels like it's a get out of jail. Not that making love for the first time is jail, but it's like well, I'm really nervous, but wait, look over there, I've seen a thing, let's look at that instead.
It
feels like that, but also not.
It's like I really wanted this to happen, but look, I just look a coffin, Oh yeah, okay, yeah. We've all had that one. I'm sorry. I really wanted to meet you today. I really wanted to go for coffee today, but then there were people next door bringing a coffin in, and I thought, I just got distracted really, and I really wanted to. I'm going
to start using that in everyday life. I'm just going to start using that as my excuse. I'm really sorry.
Perfect.
There's someone carrying a coffin next door, and they're putting it in the basement, so I can't. Not today.
I was just about to leave when. Amy storms out of the room here quite ready, and he goes after her, and they have this very loud argument at the bottom of the stairs where she says to him, "First you want to make love and then you don't," very loudly in the bottom of the stairs in his home. And we meet here Charlie's mum, Judy, played by Dorothy Fielding, and I think maybe the performance of the film that doesn't get spoken about enough, because I think a lot of the most humorous moments come from her lines and her performance here. She's really fun, it's a very self-aware performance, and doesn't she here sort of say to them, oh, come on, it's fine. Statistically speaking, you're more likely to stay married if you argue beforehand. And you think, oh, how excruciating is that?
Oh, she's brilliant though. She's got this like wonderful cynicism that is just, it's always funny when someone's that kind of like cynical in the eyes of such a pure couple. Like Charlie and Amy is so sweet and so innocent, and this little moment is just a crossing of wires that's just not worked out properly, and she's just like, it's fine, don't worry about it, like, you'll either end up divorced and miserable, or I don't know, like statistically blah, I can just imagine her with like, in like 10 years' time, she's probably got her like her glass of wine and her cigarette, and that's her all the time. And I imagine her almost like the is it Nightmare on Elm Street, the mother in that,
where she's certainly
who's kind
become
of like
a victim of particular absolutely. There's just something, I guess, because those two films come out around within a year of each other, I think, actually. 84, Elm Street, 84. Yeah, about a year of each other. And yeah, the sort of the homes here feel, I guess because I don't know whether this was shot on a stage or not. I don't know. But there's a certain there's a certain similarity in terms of the look there and the world and the sort of, I guess, the role of parents in it, really, to be people that are more sort of dismissive of the serious things that their children tell them are going on,
because otherwise, if the parents or parent in any situation was able to intervene, you would, like, in theory, that should smooth things over very quickly, and it wouldn't, you wouldn't have a film. They'd be like, oh yeah, there is a vampire next door, we'll deal with that, and then it's done. But taking that element out and putting the onus onto the younger characters who, are less worldly wise, like their way of interacting with danger is different and not necessarily well thought out, but that makes for a better film. Like, you don't want someone to just go in and know exactly what they're doing. That's not fun.
Yeah. And I guess, in both film and reality, parents have, particularly, the sort of, I hope we don't have this so much anymore, but the whole sort of children should be seen, not heard idea, and this idea that, your children can't tell you shit, your children do not know better than you. And so, your children's fears are things to just be gently, sort of, considered, because I think actually Charlie's mum here is a really caring mum. The moment that there's anything wrong, she's feeling his forehead. Are you okay? Are you sick? I think she's almost very attentive in that way. But anything that isn't, quote unquote real is something to just be, gently pushed to the side and dismissed, because we all know that these things can't happen. But yeah, really, really lovely performance here. And she has a few lines throughout the film, which I'll try and remember as we're talking, that are just crack me up every single time. And so they have this little, she intervenes with this whole, don't worry, you're less likely to get divorced once you're married. Never hurts to plan ahead, as she says, really lovely. And Amy, she leaves. Charlie ignores her again, and she quite rightly frustrated leaves. And his mum admonishes him, that wasn't very nice. And he says, Mum, there are people next door that, and she talks about, maybe the previous owner or a friend of hers had told her that the house has been sold, and that there are new people living there. And then we cut away from this scene, really almost sort of as an aside, really looking at looking at TV again and hearing that a man was murdered recently on the news as we fade away. This all really, because this isn't actually a short film. It's about an hour and 45, which generally for this kind of film is rather on the long side. I don't think the runtime is an issue at all with Fright Night. I think it is just perfectly paced and pitched. But
I think so.
But even with a slightly longer runtime, this film wastes no time whatsoever in establishing everyone, establishing the world, setting up some things that will obviously pay off really soon.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, like how when you think about films that are this long, sometimes they can feel a little bit like they drag in moments, or like sometimes it feels like you're like, oh, we didn't necessarily need to know about that, but I feel like all the elements in this all nothing feels slow. If anything, it feels like we move quite quickly through the story. But there's obviously a lot to go through in terms of like setup and meeting everybody and setbacks and things like that. Like I think it's really well done in that sense. And nothing feels like it shouldn't be in there or that it's bloated for the sake of it or anything like that. I think it's really well balanced. And an hour and 45 minutes like flew by the first time I watched it.
Yeah, definitely. Even watching, I do not know how many times I've seen this film, but even now watching it, a couple of times in the last week, I'm totally invested. I still see, as I say, the sort of what really struck me this time was really trying to concentrate on that old and new seamlessly sort of working together, and there was so much to sort of enjoy about it. So then we head to the next day, and Charlie and his friend Ed, or Evil Ed as his nickname would suggest, Evil Ed played by Stephen Jeffries, who would go on to dabble with a little bit more horror, and then go on actually to work in the adult film industry. And then actually I think as recently as a few years ago made a return to horror films. But this is I'm really, 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 really interested, Sarah, in what you think about Ed, because it is it's an unusual, and I do not mean that in a negative way whatsoever, but it is an unusual performance, to say the least, and pitched perfectly, because it's one of the most iconic performances in the film. What did you make? What did you, not just in this moment, but of Ed overall? What did you make of Ed?
So I definitely thought the first time meeting him, I was like, who is this weird and wacky dude? Like, it gave me kind of like the horror version of, like, is it Pauly Shore? Like, I don't know if you've seen Encino Man, California Man. Like, that was the vibe I was getting. I was like, this is like intentionally a little bit bizarre. Like, he's got quite a quirky looking face as well. So I think he's just going, this is my thing. I'm going to do this the way that I want to do it. Because I think traditionally this character would be like an uber nerdy character, or like really like dweeby and intentionally like a little bit like, no, they're the one that you give them $2 to do your homework for you kind of person.
Yeah, I would have related
and he also
heavily.
Is, yeah, exactly. And I quite like that they're not like the traditional of that character in that sense. They're not like, braces, glasses, massive backpack kind of vibe. It's like, no, he still has like an element of cool, but like, I think maybe the intention is less for him to be like a book nerd, and more for him to maybe have been a horror nerd, like someone who's like really into horror as a genre. Like, I think at one point when they go, and I mean, this is obviously getting ahead of myself, but when they go to see Peter Vincent to get him to come help them out with Charlie, he says, oh, we've already planned it out. You should do this, like in this episode or like in this film that you were in. Like, he clearly, and he's the one that Charlie goes to ask for help in terms of what to do about the vampire. He's like, oh, well, you need to do that. You need a cross, you need garlic, you need holy water. Like, he knows all the stuff. Like, he definitely feels like he is that knowledgeable, like, character that's their age. But the way that it's represented is less through a sort of classic nerd character, but slightly more specific to the genre. So it feels like he's just a bit of an outsider, a bit of an alternative weirdo guy.
I think if this film,
the quirkiest little face. Like, I kept looking at him going, that you're just really interesting to look at, aren't you?
Yeah, he is, and I think you could never accuse him of not really going for it in this film. I mean, the performance gets so big, but still doesn't. I think it's just this. His performance is this thing that just works within this film within the way he wants to do it. I think there's later on an awful lot of sympathy for Ed. Even when he's evil Ed in the strictest sense later on, I think there's something deeply sympathetic about him. I think if he were a character in a film 10, 15 years later, they'd have chosen him to be a gothic character, sort of within something like the sort of Faculty style films and stuff like that. That's maybe who he'd be. As you say, I think he's just he's both just sort of an outsider in the stricter sense, just doesn't fit in. Maybe people are a bit put off because of his enthusiasm or the way he behaves, and obviously it not being quite so cool at this time to like sort of alternative art and horror movies and stuff. But yeah, it is something. His character is something that sort of takes you aback, I think, at first, and as you say, you're trying to work out how this really quirky performance fits within the film, and as it turns out, incredibly well. But him and Charlie are coming out of was it trigonometry class? I think a very specific class, not one I ever took. But
they just had a pop quiz.
A pop quiz, yeah, which I guess is a quiz they do without telling you. And Charlie's done it had a bad time at it, not done very well. And while he's sort of being mocked by Ed here for not doing so well, Amy pushes past them angrily, and Ed kind of jokes at him a little bit. It did say like something like, "Did she discover what you're really like?" or something like that. Yeah. So maybe he was also sort of a bit of an outsider because he doesn't quite know when to push the joke and when not to.
Yeah. He doesn't have a filter yet, or ever. I don't think. I imagine that if the things that happened in the film didn't actually happen and he just went through life as a regular person, I still think he wouldn't develop that filter. I think that's just part of who he is. He's like, no, I don't have that. I say what I think and that's it. And I'm like, okay, cool. No worries.
And I find myself very amusing, and I guess a good word for Ed would be eccentric. Maybe he's an eccentric fellow.
That's a great word. Yeah.
And so this scene sort of quite abruptly ends from there, and Charlie's sort of on his way home, and he pulls up in his car, and there's a rather beautiful lady on his street, and she asks him an address, and he says, "Oh no, sorry, that's the house next door," which is of course the house he saw the coffin going into. And she thanks him, and he heads inside, and he's like, again, you get a little bit of this sort of the innocence of Charlie, that he's a bit sort of taken aback that this rather attractive lady even acknowledged he existed, maybe let alone maybe at first may have been looking for his house. He goes inside and he talks to his mum, and this is a moment that I think is really interesting to talk about, because he mentions to his mum, she's talked to him about the new neighbours, and she mentions that someone mentioned to her that the new guy that owns the house next door, he renovates houses. He's got a live-in carpenter. Let's just dwell on that for a moment. A live-in carpenter. And that knowing her luck, he's probably gay, right? And this is a moment for me that begins something in this film that I think's really cool, and really more and more relevant the more times I watch it, which is that first there is around this time period there are a lot of films that if they're talking about a gay character or a queer character at all, they won't use the word gay. They'd use a sort of a derogatory slur, not even from a character that you're not meant to root for. It would be just a word, that is just thrown out there because it's just the words that you call gay characters at the time. But the way it's said here, not only does she say, "Oh, he's probably gay," but there's no sort of abject horror at that whatsoever. It's just a sort of "Oh, unlucky me, he's probably really handsome and I won't get a chance with him," and it's really refreshing. And really sets up I think some of the themes that run through this film, but also the fact that it's a film where quite a large proportion of its principal cast are gay actors. Amanda Bierce, who plays Amy, Stephen Jeffries, who plays Ed, and Roddy McDowall, who plays Peter Vincent, all members of the LGBTQ plus community. And just really lovely to have that be, you know, that moment not being one that you look back on with a modern lens going, oh, why did they use that word? Because I know even a film like The Monster Squad, which I mentioned earlier, that has a couple of really strong gay slurs in it that, are products of the time, but nonetheless sit uneasy nowadays. Is this a moment that was this something that even sort of registered when you were watching it, the sort of use of language here, or was it just just seemed like, oh right, she would like a chance with the guy next door? But
I to be honest, it didn't register because I think that's the intent, right? So I think what happened was she said the line, "Oh, he's probably gay," and I laughed because I was like, that sucks for you. Like, and in my head, I wasn't like, oh, look at her pointing out something. It felt so just kind of in keeping
casual
with her character, and so casual. And I had no idea that that any of the cast were part of the LGBTQ plus community. Like that's just a nice thing to discover, and I think that's probably part of the reason why it was treated with a level of sensitivity that probably wasn't in most other films around this time. And I think because it was just kind of it felt right, and it felt like a thing that a sort of jaded, presumably divorced, we don't know for certain, but there's no dad around, so probably a jaded single mum might say, especially when you see someone really attractive, like, sorry, he's probably, let's be honest, he's a vampire, he's probably bisexual.
Yeah, I mean that's I don't write the rules,
that's how it is.
That is just in my fantasy. That's how this all works. But no, you're right.
He is. I think he is. I think this version of this vampire is definitely bisexual. But
I think so, and I think that the film shows you that in as subtle subtle's not the word, it shows you without showing you, doesn't it?
Yes,
and
definitely.
If nothing else, because he's got a live-in carpenter who's used to handling wood, and and it just I mean, the signs are all there. Okay, I've been very sensitive. I've now got to ruin that with a terrible
that was
joke.
perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And there are definitely moments throughout where I think it's where there's a film that came out now where it would be made even more explicit, and there's also some sort of dialogue in the film that it services as a wonderful double entendre, and we'll do our best to cover that as much as possible as we head through. We head through Charlie that night. Charlie he's a scream during the night from next door, and the lights go out very suddenly. And this all happens very quickly. We're soon back at the school cafeteria with Amy and Charlie. She sits down with him, and she tries to make up. Some may say that it's not really her responsibility to do that, but here she is. She's a good person.
She even says that it was her fault. She says, it was my fault. I'm like, what do you mean? No, it wasn't. It wasn't at all.
No.
Oh, bless her.
She's too sweet. She's too sweet. But again, he ruins it again because on the TVs are the problem. Television's the problem, Sarah. I hope, it's a corrupting influence on our youth. And on the TV, he sees the news that there's been another body found, and when they show a photo of the victim, it's the woman that he met the day before. So this is getting very serious very quickly. But obviously, Amy doesn't, she doesn't understand this, and goes and steals, in a very 80s movie move, goes to steal some food from someone and smushes it into Charlie's face. And
That's
Ed,
what you get.
It's what you get, and Evil Ed mutters the line in hysterics, the iconic line, "You're so cool, Brewster." which is not only one of the most iconic lines from the film, but was the title of a really excellent, very thorough documentary about Fright Night, the making of Fright Night, which is well worth seeing. I think there's a shortened, maybe sort of hour and a half version on Shudder, but it was originally released as a DVD Blu-ray set with this very, hours long comprehensive documentary of everything Fright Night 1 and Fright Night Part 2, which is awesome and well worth watching. You're so cool, Brewster. Charlie then heads home. He's managed to clean himself up, you'd never know, and goes to sees the basement doors and tries his luck a little bit here, but is soon stopped by the other gentleman, probably not our vampire, but our living carpenter, Billy.
The fact that you see him during the daylight, I'm like, okay, so this is when I was trying to work out like his relationship to our vampire, because if we're going with traditional rules, I was like, okay, so vampires can't be in daylight. So I was like, okay, so is this a familiar? Is what I was thinking at this point. It's just a thrall who's there to do his bidding. I'm like, yeah, that seems that tracks at this point. So that was kind of where I was sat in terms of my understanding of who is it Billy? Is that
Billy,
right?
yes, Billy.
His
roommate.
But he's got this like. Yeah, his roommate, indeed. His roommate,
live-in
carpenter.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It has this sort of protective vibe, though. Like, he's like, I'm going to make sure that, like, well, first of all, like, don't just randomly walk onto someone's property and start opening their basement doors. Like, that's outrageous. What are you doing, Charlie? And him be like, and him getting caught, and then be like, he says, oh, what are you doing? He's like, nothing. And he's like, you better stay that way, kid. Like, there's such an emphasis on him being a kid. It's just, I think it's just kind of harking back to the fact that this isn't, this is kids that we're dealing with, and that their attitude towards things is going to be slightly more like, I guess less wise, less thought through, and just kind of more instinctual. Going, I know there's something down there. I need to figure out what it is, without going, I'm going onto someone else's property right now. So
Charlie's an impulsive guy.
Caught.
He's an impulsive gentleman who maybe should think before he does stuff. Jonathan Stark here playing Billy Cole in what again is just another perfectly pitched performance, as you say, the way he sort of throws Kid out there almost as a dagger, as an establishing of hierarchy and roles here, and it is really enigmatic. By the end of the film, do we really understand who or what Billy is? I think that maybe we'll get to that in a little bit. But as you say, I think a familiar is the most. He's our Renfield, isn't he? Really, he's our sort of Renfield to our Dracula, our Straker to our Barlow in Salem's Lot. He's the guy that gets shit done when boss is having a kip during the day. And
he's got to paint the windows black.
He has, it's
good.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of carpentry to do. There's an awful lot of carpentry.
Oh yes.
There actually probably is a lot of carpentry to do in that house. So who am I to judge? It needs sorting out in there.
Definitely.
So Charlie heads back inside, a little bit sort of put out and worried because he got caught almost trying to break into someone's property. And then we see, we cut to that evening and we get a very clear indication of who or what's living next door and what the stakes are of what's going on. Charlie's
stakes, nice.
Nice. You see, I'm just I can do it without even realizing. It's a gift. All right, I can't help the things I've been, the talents I've been born with are not my fault. Charlie sort of he wakes up. He'd been watching movies late, right, and he wakes up in the middle of the night, and across the way, very much posing in front of the window is a woman and a gentleman behind her. Both of them are in sort of a state of undress, and she seems to know that Charlie's there right from the start. She's like very much giving him eye contact throughout this entire moment before he even knows it's happening. She takes her bra off, you know, and he gets very excited about this. And there is this, you know, movement, you know, this sort of sensual play between her and the guy standing behind her. You know, it all feels very sort of, you know, seductive and erotic, and it gives you a very good indication at first that this is going to be a film at times that's quite hot. You know, it's a little bit steamy. You know, you got, you know, this hot couple in the window, watching, you know, at least for the lady, watching the kid across the street watch them, which is probably fine and doesn't need to be, you know, assessed any further. But we soon realise that she's a victim, and she, you know, and that the guy behind her, he's got fangs. He goes to bite her, and but he sees Charlie too at the last moment, and he reaches out, and with very long, slender fingers. Yes, that's perfect. That's perfect. For those of you listening, you don't get how perfect a reenactment Sarah just gave of this moment in the film, but he does indeed. He reaches out with these long, slender fingers, and, you know, sharpened nails, pulls down the drawstring of the blind, yeah, I mean, so this is your first sort of properly supernatural moment in the film. What did you think?
It was great, and you know, because I already knew we were dealing with vampires, and I think anyone who's seen a vampire film will know, because the coffin was being brought in. I think everyone's kind of presuming that's where we're at, but this is the first time we see him, right?
Yes,
we haven't seen.
No, we've seen him carrying the coffin.
He is carrying the coffin.
Face. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
so this is the first time we see Jerry Dandridge, and my God, what an attractive man he is.
Yeah, he's all right.
And another crossover with Child's Play.
Our second crossover.
I didn't clock it straight away. I was like, I know that face. I don't know who this is, but I recognized the face straight away, but I couldn't pinpoint it just yet. So that was something that I discovered after watching the film. But yeah, the couple look beautiful in this moment anyway. Yeah. So I mean, no wonder. I mean, I'm sure he's very grateful that he had those binoculars in that moment.
Yeah, I mean,
so he get a real nice close up view of that.
This is quite an anachronistic, this sort of idea of like, or maybe it isn't. Maybe I'm just much older. But, you know, this idea of, like, you know, kids sort of spying on people in the neighborhood and catching a view of people doing rude stuff in the windows. That's something I sort of heard about a lot as a kid. You know, like, I was walking past this house the other day and there were two people having sex in the window. You know, as if, you know, if you were lucky enough as a kid, the most exciting thing you could see was, you know, adults fornicating through windows. But I don't know, maybe is that something that was sort of a thing when you were a kid, that, you know, that I guess maybe the window is like, maybe the window's a sort of metaphor for forbidden acts, you know, and that's why it's that, you know, that you might see adults doing the forbidden thing through the window.
Yeah, I feel like it is definitely like a thing that I heard about, but I think more common than that was people maybe accidentally clocking someone when they were trying to get dressed, as opposed to something definitely more. Yes, as opposed to something more more physical act of like people together. Like it tends to be like a person who's like just in their bedroom getting changed. And I can't say that I had the pleasure or. No,
same, because it was just
what you're seeing.
Yeah, and because it's probably just didn't something that really, you know, unless people were caught by accident, you know, it's just not a thing, is it? It's a silly sort of childhood. Yeah. Wouldn't it be interesting if I saw this thing that I'm not meant to see? Because I don't even really know what it is yet. Yeah. You know, so
yeah.
So when did you sort of put it together that Jerry is Chris Sarandon, who is also the detective in Child's Play?
Literally not until after the film, after I
Okay.
looked it up on IMDb, because I didn't I just kept looking at him, going, "He's a very attractive man, isn't he?" I recognize that face, and that was it. Like I couldn't pinpoint it during the film, so I had to look it up, and then I went, "Oh my god, of course it is." As soon as I'd actually looked it up, I was like, "Duh."
It's such a different character, though, isn't it? Because I think all of that sort of charm that he has here, you know, this ability to be totally in control of the situation, that's not really present for the character in, you know, I think that the character in Child's Play is it leaves much less of an impact. It isn't there to steal the scene. He's there to aid the story, whereas here the point is be the coolest person in every moment that you exist in. And he does. I mean, he's got this incredible aura about him. He's beautiful. He's got the best selection of sweaters outside of Stephen, outside of, I don't know, Stephen from the Traitors or something. I don't know, but you know, it's you know, he really does, and they all look so comfy as well. He is.
He's done really well for himself in the costume department, for sure.
Yeah, he really has. I mean, he's got an awesome wardrobe. He's got a living carpenter. I mean, like you know, he can stay up all night if he wants to. You know, he's
to
got
be a vampire.
Exactly. I think that's something that maybe this is one of those points actually of that turn in vampire films, because I think like the idea of the Hollywood vampire, you know, so we're talking from, like, I don't know, Universal sort of Bela Lugosi, back to Britain for Hammer's Christopher Lee Dracula, and, you know, the other films that were made in between. The 80s is when it sort of started to become the idea that it'd be really cool to be a vampire, you know, that it, that maybe there's more benefits than there are cons. And I think here, you know, that it doesn't totally sell that here, because there has to be an element of this is a bad thing, you know. But by the time and even with something like Interview with a Vampire, where there's this assumption it would be cool, there is sort of a condemnation of eternal life, isn't there? You know, that maybe it would be awful to watch all the people you care about die and to live eternally. It's quite a lonely existence. But Jerry's cool. Jerry is cool. After Charlie sees this moment, he wakes his mum up, and she sort of gives him a little bit of, you know, oh, what, you know, she's sort of out of it, and she's got an early shift tomorrow or something, so needs her sleep. So Charlie runs outside and hides in the bushes to see, you know, these two men carrying what's a body wrapped up. And just before this, actually, we get a POV, don't we, of what we assume, I guess, is Jerry, or in a bat form. It'll be confirmed that it's a bat form later on. And we see Jerry do something here. So the two men are putting the body into the car. Charlie's watching them, and we see Jerry do something here. Now, I wonder what you made of this throughout the film, which is that he's eating fruit. And this is a motif throughout the film, that he eats fruit, he eats an apple, and I think he eats like I don't know, an orange or something later on. And this is a character choice for Chris Sarandon to do this. Was it something that struck you as really odd, the sort of fruit eating in the...
Not initially. Not initially, because I think the first thing he's eating is an apple. And I was like, oh, is this, you know, a sort of Adam and Eve, you know, the snake and the apple. I went, oh, I just kind of accepted that. But then, so he has another apple later, but then, like you say, there was an orange at one point, and I was like, I don't know what that means. So, yeah.
You're like, I've run out of metaphors for this now.
Exactly. I don't know. I just think there's something... I don't know. Maybe it's because I think, and I don't know when this comes into like vampire lore, is that sometimes they don't eat regular food, like they don't eat like human food, and actually maybe that could make them sick. So the fact that he's going, no, I don't have that. That's not one of my vampire traits. Maybe it's a healthy eating, healthy living, kind of appreciating the body, kind of, I don't know.
Drinking blood doesn't mean you shouldn't get one of your 5 a day, right? You know, that's
exactly.
I think that's
perfect.
definitely a tradition, is that vampires don't or can't eat. Normally that's maybe that's one of the few things that this film does that is an outlier in that way, is that, there's the famous Dracula line, "I never drink wine," and you never see him eat food. But according to Chris Sarandon, the reason that there is that he eats fruit in the film is that he wanted the idea that he has some bat DNA in there, and most bats that's their diet. They eat fruit.
My God, of course.
Yeah, and again, it wasn't something I ever, I just thought it was a character quirk. And it is, I guess, just a character quirk, really. But the reasoning for it is that he wanted to have this element of, a tie to bats, and that most bats exist on fruit. So he wanted to eat fruit as a sort of little fun tie into that. Charlie heads in, clearly Jerry can see him, and Charlie gets freaked out and runs inside, and he tries to tell his mum that next door neighbour's a vampire, and we get one of those he's a what? And then we cut to the next day with Amy. A what? A what? And then again, Amy says, Charlie, is this some sort of trick to win me back? And she looks like, she really hopes that's... And again, he just completely... Yeah. Do you know what? Charlie doesn't feel like a terrible guy, right? But he does a lot of enormously inconsiderate things in this film. He's, you sort of wonder, don't you, really?
Yeah, I feel like in my head I was trying to help him out, justify it, and be like, is it because there's something about vampires tend to have this kind of draw, right? So they'll draw you in, and you kind of get a little bit focused on them. It's almost as if he hasn't he's got these blinkers on, right, the whole time. He's not able to know when she's when she was on the bed, right, at the very start of the film. He blanks her again when he's looking out the window just before she's leaving the house. There are several moments where he just gets distracted with anything that seems to be associated with Jerry. So, I don't know. So I was kind of trying to justify it in that way, especially because then, and again, this is me getting ahead of myself, later on we have the reverse of that, and Amy is completely locked in on him. And maybe it's just maybe it's Jerry's power over him, but I don't know, maybe he's just an inconsiderate kid, a silly boy who is just a one-track mind kind of guy.
Yeah, I think that I think it's a little bit of every, I think it's a little bit of both of those things, really. But I do think that it would be, luckily, due to William Ragsdale's performance, I think Charlie comes across as predominantly sympathetic rather than just an arse, really.
Yeah.
But, as when he tells his mum and he tells Amy that, they've got a vampire next door, clearly they don't believe him at all. So he does the next logical step, which he immediately gets to the police and gets a police officer to come round with him, and together they go to the door. And he obviously hasn't told the police officer that he thinks it's a vampire, but they go to the house and they're met by Billy at the door, who sees them in, and we get our first look at the inside of Jerry's home. And I mean, it's again that perfect mix of sort of, it's on a suburban residential street, but inside it's sort of this feast of gothic cobwebs and that staircase, the coolest staircase, which is there so cool lines can be said at the top of it, as we find out later on. But yeah, what did you think of the interior of the house and of Charlie's decision to immediately get a police officer to come round to the house with him?
I think, it seemed like the logical next step, right? Because he wasn't going to go in there on his own, or it wasn't feeling like that was the next step. Get another authority figure in. It makes sense, I think. I do think, does Amy sort of say something along the lines of, don't tell them that you think it's a vampire because they'll lock you up.
Yeah.
So he goes there with the intent of trying to just be like, no, that this is the person who murdered these two people. but doesn't want to reveal the fact that he thinks that he's a vampire because, yeah, exactly, it might sound like he's lost his mind to someone who doesn't know that is actually what's going on. I think it's really interesting that when we get in there, you do have this juxtaposition of like old and new straight away, right? So you have it just looked amazing in there, and I know there are cobwebs, but I'm like, no, that's all part of it. Like, I'm not gonna like say anything mean about Billy not cleaning up, but he's clearly been focusing on other carpentry things.
Well,
there's other,
there's been other more pressing.
There's other wood to deal with.
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
He's been preoccupied. Is what the problem is.
Indeed.
Yes. But there's also a moment here that's really interesting. So as they're having this conversation, Charlie roots around, and in one of the boxes he sees a painting, and it's someone that looks like Amy. Now this is obviously something that isn't just a throwaway. It's becomes towards the end of the film a really main part of the narrative, and I was just wondering what your because this is, I think with vampire stories, there does seem to be this need sometimes to inject, the idea of a long lost love, and this film, there's something that happens in Coppola's Dracula, where this has almost, because of that film, becoming so popular, has become a long running, almost like agreed idea within the Dracula narrative that, for instance, Lucy is the reincarnation of a long lost love. This is something that is just not present in the novel at all. There is no romantic element to Dracula whatsoever, this here is maybe the sort of an early sort of 7 years or so before Coppola does it, the vampire, the almost a part of the narrative being this yearning for a long lost love or for someone that you used to know. So what did you sort of make of it when you saw this painting at first?
I haven't seen any of the films that originated this concept. The only my knowledge of it is just purely from hearing it or from absorbing it through other things, like the Green Lung song "Oceans of Time." So like I love the idea of it. I think it's really nice, and I also think it's such a romantic kind of concept of destiny, right? And the person that you're meant to be with, and the sort of it's almost as if one lifetime isn't the only existence of your connection to someone else, which I think is that is super romantic. It's so nice.
Yeah.
It also, I think, they talk about it in the Mummy, the one with Brendan Fraser.
They do. You're right.
Because it gets brought back with that as well, almost like this reincarnation concept, right? Which is, I guess, that's quite a nice way of going. Actually, if you were a vampire, if your soulmate, your other half, were to pass away because they weren't a vampire as well, that they would still be out there somewhere, and you can go and find them and cross oceans of time to be with them.
Yeah, I think I think it is. It's a, as far as my, sort of opinion of like that working within the Dracula narrative, I think it works really well in the Coppola Dracula film is a film we could definitely do an episode on, and I have a really mixed feeling relationship with that film. I think parts of it are excellent and parts of it don't work. But that concept, in general, divorced entirely from, whether or not the film it's in totally works. And for anyone listening that doesn't know the band Green Lung, please go out and give them a listen. They're a really amazing, heavy metal band. And the song that Sarah mentioned, Oceans of Time, is just a wonderful closer to that album. Beautiful, beautiful song. They're pretty good, aren't they, really? They're pretty...
they're pretty great. They're pretty great. We've been to several gigs of theirs. The minute that we discovered them, I was like, right, I'm just going to go to all of them now.
Yeah, they're definitely.
And actually, that's how I know this band, because Low End opened for them at one point. So
yes,
yeah,
super.
It's all connected.
It's all connected, but we can't recommend Green Lung enough. They're absolutely incredible. Go out, check their albums out, and see them live on tour. They're amazing. But yeah, I think that concept of, I think when you have that connection with someone, and we're diverting a little bit here, but we like a diversion on the podcast. When you have that connection, that there is something deeply emotional and romantic about the idea that it doesn't have to be the end when this particular journey's over. And if, as you say, if one of you can survive, you can try and find each other again. And I don't know if that's. Yeah, I know. It feels really moving, and I wonder, because in this, we'll come back to this later in the film actually, because I wonder about Jerry's intentions, because the way I've always viewed the film, sort of growing up, and the relationship between him and Amy was quite different to how I viewed it watching it more recently. But we'll come back to that. But yeah, this is a whole new element to the narrative, that there may be someone that at least appears to look like Amy in Jerry's past. So after sort of not getting anywhere with this conversation, but the officer, again, it's that adult versus children thing, isn't it? Where that we saw, as you said, in Nightmare on Elm Street, where as soon as the adult is entered into the equation, the other adult is just going to believe them over the kid. And so eventually it doesn't take too much for Charlie to say, well, can we check the basement? And when asked why, Charlie utters the line, where you'll find Jerry Dandridge sleeping the sleep of the undead, which may not be the best way to get what you want in this particular situation. But, awesome line, and feels like another one of those, nods back to the old, doesn't it, really?
Yeah. I also think that, like, Charlie at this point is just getting exasperated. Like, Billy is there very smugly just being like, yeah, everything's fine, officer. Yeah, come through, have a look. Yeah, sorry, my boss is out at work today, so you can't see Jerry at the moment. And and then Charlie's just like, oh yeah, well, I know that he's asleep in the basement. And then it sounds absurd, like, compared to the very adult conversation that Billy and Detective Lennox are having. Like, it's just like, they're like, oh, and then Billy starts to make fun of him, going, uh-oh.
Yeah,
sort of,
he
like,
really
pulling faces and going...
him. Yeah, he really humiliates him here. And that, I think, in a lot of ways, like, because, Charlie's sort of overpowered by both of these characters in the film. But here, because it's a more human interaction here, it feels, really sort of real. And when you just want someone to believe you, but there's someone, an older person mocking you, and and you, as we've all been there when we've tried to explain that there may be someone in the basement sleeping the sleep of the undead, it's no one ever takes you seriously. So
they don't.
What can you do? So they end up, Charlie's dragged out of there by the police officer here. He's given no time of day whatsoever, and is uttered the line that if you it's something like, what is it? If you come back to the station again, I'm throwing you in jail forever, forever and ever.
Yeah.
And it's a way of I guess it's a narrative device to delimit. To remove the chance of law enforcement getting involved, isn't it? The adults aren't going to help, and the police aren't coming either. Yeah. And as Charlie watches, the police officer drive away, the street lamps come on, which is a really great, sort of a portent of doom, really. And Billy stands on the balcony of the house. And watches him as the sun is starting to set, and we know what that indicates. Then we have a scene that is just once you sort of think about one particular aspect of it, the scene makes no sense whatsoever. But it is a cool moment nonetheless, and that is Charlie goes to Ed for help. He goes to Ed to ask for how he can survive a vampire attack. Now, that's all well and good, but as far as I was aware, Charlie was really into horror movies and liked watching Peter Vincent. So why doesn't he know these things already?
Yeah, good point, actually. So, because like at the very start, when they're making out on the floor, Amy says, "Oh, look, Peter Vincent's on," and he's like, "Oh, I don't care." And she says, "No, but you love Peter Vincent."
Yeah. But I love you more.
So, yeah. Lovely moment, but also it implies that they watch Peter Vincent all the time. And
yes.
like you say, he's a horror fan, so he should know. And this isn't... I would argue that like basic vampire knowledge, cross garlic and holy water, which are the three things that Evil Ed says to him, that's pretty well known.
Yeah.
I think there could have been other things that he could have said that were maybe a little less known or something like that. But yeah, I think... yeah, I agree, but I didn't clock it in the moment. I just he went to the next logical person. Maybe he's drawing a blank on what I've forgotten all my vampire lore. I must go to my my nerdy friend, my alternative, like slightly quirky friend who will tell me the answer. But yeah.
I think it's
it doesn't make sense, does it?
No, it doesn't make sense. It's there obviously for audience members that somehow have managed to avoid, as you say, vampire lore that is just so steeped, because we're not talking about obscure knowledge here. This is popular culture. We know how vampires are warded off, how they're injured, how they're killed, and it's obviously there. This is, I guess, something that is a device that was just common here. Let's keep everyone that maybe has come to see this film that has managed to avoid this pop culture idea. That this is that they need to be told, but it doesn't. You'd think Charlie would know here, but I do like that there's a little moment here where Ed says to him, "But the most important thing, Charles," and I don't know why, but I really, really like that. Is that a vampire cannot enter your home without being invited, and I just like the way he says Charles there. Really, I don't know why. It's just one of those things, and. That is, that feels like the most definitive, don't worry, he can't come get you, can't get into your home. I've also thought that was a really interesting sort of mythology around the vampire as well anyway. I don't think it's remotely, a lot of these conventions are not remotely drawn from folklore. The sort of the vampire in Hollywood movies, in any movies really, has been generally quite divorced from the concept of I don't know, the reanimated corpses that rise from the grave in particular folklores. But nonetheless, we Charlie feels safe, and you think, well, we can't come in if I don't invite him. As long as I don't let him in, it'll be okay. And then he find a little bit later that evening, his mum calls him into the living room to find, you get why she's done it, but
oh yeah,
there he is in all of his glory. Chris Sarandon as Jerry Dandridge, our first proper meeting with our vampire in the movie, and it's
great.
He's so cool.
He's drinking a Bloody Mary as well. Yeah, I was like, oh, this is so good. That's like,
yeah,
nice.
Yeah, it's all so good, and you can tell how sort of smitten Charlie's mum is here, and it's a nice sort of look into her character as well, that she wants to make a good impression on the guy next door. Maybe she wants the company. It's really, really well placed, and Jerry here just exudes charm and threat at the same time. He is both incredibly charming, and he almost tells Charlie what he's going to do in front of his mum, and just doesn't care.
Yeah. What power he has in that moment, because he knows that Charlie knows, and if anything, he kind of likes the feeling, I think, of being able to be like, oh, I can say what I want, because like no one's going to believe you anyway. And actually, that's that's quite a big like dick swinging kind of feeling, I'd imagine. whilst also kind of just being very naturally charismatic, and just him, and also I think he's like wearing a red scarf as well, which I think is just a nice little touch. Like I think he's like it just kind of feels like, that's like the when the vampire fangs go in, the sort of like the blood as it falls down the back of someone, in two delightful lines.
Yes.
It's a great scene. I'm glad that Judy doesn't get got, because I mean I think he almost does something, but instead decides to confront Charlie, doesn't he? So he sort of comes in through her window initially.
And walks past the mirror, and I remember there were a few moments, because this is a big film for my family. Actually, we all love this film, and are all really loving the depiction of him walking past that mirror in one take, and there being no reflection in it. And because Charlie runs away from this situation. He doesn't hide at all that he's incredibly intimidated, and Jerry says to him, see you soon. And Charlie heads upstairs. Isn't he before this scene? He's like nailing his window shut. And then we cut to that night, and as you say, in comes Jerry through Charlie's mum's window, and he like pulls the door really hard and sort of traps the door in, so giving you an indication of just how much power he possesses. And Charlie has left his room because of the noise outside at this point, and we see Jerry head into his room undiscovered and whistles the song "Strangers in the Night" as he closes the door, because he's so effortlessly cool. And then we have, like for me, one of just the coolest scenes in the film. Charlie heads back to his room, and Jerry from his like cupboard, closet. Jerry emerges from the closet, and he stalks slowly behind Charlie and attacks him. And here, so much happens in this scene. That we get an indication of Jerry's strength. That he says, you wouldn't want me to wake your mum, I'd have to kill her too. Almost that there's like, there doesn't need to be any sort of collateral damage here, and it's actually something that Jerry says to him here that I think isn't touched upon that much, but it's really interesting, where he says, I don't want to kill you. I don't want to kill you. Forget about me. And I'll forget about you. I could kill you, but doing that would give you what I didn't get, which is a choice. Now, that isn't, that reminds me a little bit of a later film, but one we spoke about earlier, Interview with the Vampire, where Lestat says, I'm going to give you the choice that I never had, and weirdly, although, Jerry clearly does need to be stopped, and he's a menace, and he's a terrible, person. Here he is saying, I kill these people because I have to. If you just forget about me, I'll extend you the same courtesy. This is your chance to choose to just leave me alone. And what were your thoughts during this sort of initial confrontation here?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting that comes up, and sort of gives the implication that whoever sired him just did it, and maybe didn't look after him afterwards, and maybe he had to kind of learn the hard way how to be a vampire and whatnot. I just imagine that he's sort of implying that it's not always easy, and there's like a human element to him, which is really interesting, because I feel like this and maybe some of the way he is with Amy, I kind of feel like the only moments where he's a bit vulnerable. But only for it only ever seems to for like a split second, or like a tiny little moment where he just reveals a little bit more about himself, but then he goes right back into, no, I'm in complete control. I am the strongest thing in this room, in this moment, and at this time. I think it's really interesting, and I always think it's really nice to just have something a little bit more dynamic than just he's a monster.
He's a bad guy.
It's quite nice. but it doesn't take away from that. It doesn't completely justify him. It just gives him a little bit more dimension as a character, and I think it works. I think it really works in this moment. But yeah, Charlie's just like, no, I'm still gonna do something about you.
Yeah, and
just yeah,
which is interesting because that shows a really sort of, I don't know, like a very strong moral compass for Charlie there, I think, because if you think about, if this happened to you and you were confronted by this creature which is just worlds beyond you in every conceivable way, and it told you, look, I'll leave you alone if you leave me alone. I'm gonna keep doing terrible things. There's nothing you can do about that. But I am extending you here an enormous courtesy by saying you deserve to die, but I will let you live if you just leave me. What would you do in that situation? We all like to think, well, we'd go for the, but you're up against something, inhuman and, for all ancient. And I think there's all that for Charlie. But as you said, for Jerry, these moments of where the person that he was and still is to a certain extent comes through, while acknowledging, I guess to him, killing is, it probably isn't viewed very differently to the concept of eating meat and farming and stuff, that he's just higher up on the food chain than we are. And so Charlie tries to again, go with a cross. He tries to, push him away from him, and Jerry just with no effort at all flips the window up. The nails are torn immediately. And Charlie's pushed outside as a photograph of Amy is pushed out the window and smashes down onto the fence outside in a moment of for foreshadowing for what could come to be in this story.
Yeah, I thought that this was I was like, oh, is this Chekhov's photo or Chekhov's fence post?
Yeah, Chekhov's fence post. I love it. Let's just say it is because I like that. And then Charlie sort of manages to stop Jerry from sort of pushing him to his death by stabbing him in the hand with a pencil. And that's interesting because I think that the idea is that it hurts him so much because it's wooden, like a wooden stake. Yeah. I don't know if that's, generally speaking, something I've seen in another vampire film where, it's not necessarily just the fact that a wooden stake through the heart will kill you, but that wood is a general no-no for vampires. It's normally silver, isn't it? A silver. Yeah. Silver is a repellent to vampires, not just... It's sort of anything that pierces the heart rather than it being wooden stakes. But here, wood is a problem, But it's a great moment though, because I like the way that when they take a certain amount of damage, a certain amount of the true form, or the monster side of them comes out, and I think it's a brilliant way of. Showing that he's not completely infallible. I think that's also important for Charlie to see that, and to realize that he's not completely powerless, but will have to be clever in the way that he deals with Jerry. I think I also him with his it's enough when you see fangs and the long glamorous nails, but then when we see his whole face changes and he's got even more than just the fangs. He's got a full mouthful of horrible teeth, and it's very cool to see the progression of what his vampire form looks like. And probably a good point to mention that the special effects in this film are just on another level, really.
So
the monstrous forms of the vampires are all amazing. There is a death transformation later in the film that I think still stands amongst one of the coolest. Weirdly, sort of, not just looks amazing, the special effects are so good, but the emotion that run through this scene that happens later on, the complexity of the emotions that run through it is just extraordinary. But here, we see Jerry as, we see that this is a monster movie, and that Jerry is in he is the cool new suave vampire, but he's also a monstrous creature. And that, as you say, comes out when damage is inflicted. And even to the extent that when he yells here, it creates almost a gale force wind coming from him. That he's so other, so supernatural, that the things emanate from him when he is a monster. But he's not immune to the threat of someone's mum calling from the other room. So importantly, the moment that Charlie's mum starts calling out what's going on, he quickly, we get this cool sort of de-transformation where he becomes himself again, but the look of menace and anger and hate on his face at this point, that he's been injured. You get a sense that this just doesn't happen. He does not get hurt. And he does this thing where he sort of shows the hole in his hand, and then he clenches really, really tight, and you hear this noise as if he's dug his nails into his skin, and then just exits from the scene, gets lost in a sort of gust of wind. And so Charlie goes and he helps his mum out of the door, and while they're talking, and is I'm trying to think, is this the moment with the yeah, it is. This has got another one of my really funny lines that I really love, that are really funny, where the car gets it wrecked out. So, Jerry, we find out in a moment, has wrecked Charlie's car, but you hear it happen outside, and Charlie's trying to get his mum to not pay attention to it, and she says to him, "Do you want what about your nightmare? Do you want a Valium?" Isn't that great?
She's great.
Yeah, super, super funny. Super, super funny line. Let's medicate the children. I tell you what, some nights I would definitely, if only there was someone to offer me a Valium. I digress. So they, Charlie then heads back to his room, and he gets a phone call from Jerry, and this is a moment of proper horror here. I think, and I know he says to him, "I know what you're doing, Charlie. I can see you." And Charlie turns, and the way it's lit, and he's just perspiring terribly, and we have this sort of zoom in on Jerry looking at him from the other room, and Jerry stood on the phone to Charlie with his hand over a sort of basin of water, dripping blood into it. And Billy is on his knees in front of Jerry, sort of tending to the wound. And there is a sort of story from the production of the film where Jonathan Stark and Chris Sarandon didn't really get the subtext that was going on, that Tom Holland was trying to create between these two. And apparently, that Jonathan was tending to the wound in Chris's hand, and Tom said, no, get on your knees and, help him. And they apparently, when they watched this scene back, because at the end of the scene, you see sort of Jerry stood, Billy knelt in front of him, and they pulled the blind down. And apparently they saw that moment, and they were like, oh, we understand now. Okay. And Jerry says to Charlie here, I destroyed your car, Charlie, but it's nothing compared to what I'm going to do to you tomorrow night. And it's full of menace, full of threat, full of perspiring, and I think it's one of the sort of genuinely more threatening moments of the film. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've had a really intense encounter before this anyway. So where he was essentially given the choice, which he opted out of, especially because he was violently acting against Jerry. So I think, I think this is the only place that Jerry can go from this point. He's like, well, if you're not gonna just ignore me and let me get on with what I'm doing, then I'm gonna get rid of you. You're now a barrier. You're going to stop me from doing what I'm trying to do. Then I'm going to, stop you from breathing, probably.
Yeah. I think he says, you started this, Charlie, and I'm going to finish it.
Yeah.
Which is fairly straightforward, very clear cut, I know. And so obviously now, while this is happening, there is a Peter Vincent film on in the background. And during this whole exchange, we see Peter say that, a lot of people don't believe in vampires, but I do, and I always beat them. And watch me, do it. Watch me win against them. And we see him stake a vampire while Charlie almost gleefully, almost completely, obsessively is watching him saying, "Do it, Peter, do it," And so Charlie's next step is to go to the studio where Peter Vincent records. And we get to meet not Peter Vincent, the I guess fading movie star, but Peter Vincent, the actor here, played by Roddy McDowall, who gives an awesome performance in the film. I think we should take for granted that everyone in this film is great, but he's so good in it. Really prestigious career behind him. Apparently, was incredibly well known in sort of Hollywood, a very social person. No one had a bad thing to say about the guy, just the nicest gentleman. And on the set of Fright Night, very much acted as a sort of a calming presence for everybody on set, and someone that everyone really gravitated towards. I think, the actor that was originally, envisaged in the role. I think Peter Vincent being an amalgamation of the horror actors Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. And I think the idea was that Tom Holland hoped that Vincent Price would play the role. Would come and play the role. That obviously didn't work out, but apparently, if I remember correctly, and I think the story goes that Roddy McDowall did get Vincent Price and Tom Holland in communication at some point, and not only did Vincent Price say that Roddy McDowall did an excellent job, but that the film was great too. So that's really lovely.
That's lovely.
So. So maybe not who Tom Holland envisioned as Peter Vincent, but just so good here. Really sort of, strangely complex character in his, need to be one thing, but while at the same time just genuinely being another. What were your thoughts here? So you've seen Peter Vincent, vampire killer, in the movies, and then when you meet him here, were you like, oh god, he's just kind of like, a sort of shell of a person, really?
I love this performance. I loved Peter Vincent as a character, and the arc that he goes on, and the sort of like toing and froing between living up to be the hero that he plays in his films. I thought that, in this moment where they first encounter him, I figured this would be how it would go, just because like Charlie's watched him on TV. I'm like, he's probably just an actor, Charlie. Like, and also it feels like in this universe, vampires don't exist, or people believe vampires don't exist. So the idea of saying that you believe in vampires suddenly becomes like, oh dear, there's something wrong with you. And we need to look after you, instead of even there being a possibility that could be right. So I kind of figured this was how it would pan out in terms of his chatting with Peter Vincent. I thought maybe Peter Vincent could have been a bit nicer, but then I guess he is quite jaded by the fact that there's a great line where he says, in response to Charlie saying he believes in vampires, is something about being too late, or like kids these days only like someone in a hockey mask
hacking up
slashing.
Young virgins.
I was like,
yeah, because he's
like, I also like that. I like both.
We can like both, exactly, because he's just been fired.
Classic bisexual. I just like both.
he's
both
he's
all.
This is it. We the old guard and the new guard. We just have more horror. It's all good. And because he's just been, it's probably quite not the best point to corner Vita Pinsent and Vita Pinsent and to tell him that you believe in vampires, because he's just been fired from Fright Night because, as you quite rightly say, no one wants to see vampires anymore. And the line is that Charlie says, "I believe in vampires," and at first he says, "That's nice. If there were maybe a few more of you, maybe my ratings would have been better." And then he says, I think he says that in fact there's one living next door to me. And Peter has this lovely line delivery where he just says, "Pardon me?" as if he has it's very gentle and very just okay. Where is this? Where what? I don't need this right now. But also, are you okay? And you just get a good sense of the guy here that he's got a front to keep up. He probably has had in the past, maybe not so much recently, but horror fans coming to meet him, and he wants to be this, this character for them. But really, he's kind of a sort of, I don't know, sort of a bitter but also kind of sad guy whose glory days are behind him, and he's just trying to keep it together. Trying to make some money where he can. I mean, the concept of a horror host is something that for me growing up here just wasn't really a thing. I know in the States, that they're, you've got really famous examples like Billy Bob Briggs and of course Elvira, and lots of regional horror hosts as well, which I'm assuming what Peter Vincent is here. Is that something that you had growing up at all, like the horror host on TV?
No, not at all. Not something that I was familiar with. I think the only reason I know about it is just through American examples that I've seen. I think it's a nice idea, and you sort of feel like they're the ones who are telling the bedtime story kind of thing, right? They're the kind of the gateway into the unknown, and they're the ones who are like the knowledgeable person who's going, actually, this is. It almost feels like they're the. I mean, I think in this particular case, this is him. Like, he's the one in the films, but like you get I'm the expert. Let me recount the tale of encountering such and such. It sort of feels like it's almost like they have the monster manual, and they're gonna tell you about it. They're like, now this is what you do. This is what happened when I encountered one of these, and it definitely has this kind of you get this like expert level knowledge. And I think that's exactly why Charlie goes to him, right? Even without sort of clocking that this is a TV show.
It's an act.
Like, this is probably just an actor. He hasn't connected that. And I think like Charlie's gotten quite desperate at this point anyway, so he doesn't know what else to do. So maybe he's not even worried about the fact that he's an actor. He's probably like, well, but you have been in films with these types of creatures, so you will still know what I need to do.
You at least have the knowledge.
In theory.
Yeah.
But
no, Peter is not. He's not playing ball, and he sort of can't get out of there quick enough. Really, once he realizes, I guess, understandably so, that the person in front of him is being very earnest and giving an idea that's completely, unhinged to him. And so we then head back to Charlie's home. Ed and Amy have both gone there to see Charlie. They head upstairs. And it's just complete, it's scene from horror movie in there. There's candles lit everywhere, there's garlic hanging around. There's Charlie sharpening a wooden stake. It's like tick, 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 isn't it, really? And in an exchange here, they basically find out that Charlie's planning on breaking in next door before sunset, finding Jerry's coffin and driving a stake through his heart. And Amy manages to convince him, look, stay here, please don't do anything. We'll go see Peter Vincent, and we will try and get him to help, even though he's already refused. Please don't do anything without me. And just on a side of lines that may have a certain different reading to them. Ed does say that, if Charlie were to die, that Jerry may be able to suck his way through the entire town, and don't threaten me with a good time. But this, so
I think also the follow up to that line right after that, he says, which wouldn't be such a bad thing, and I know that he means that as a this town's finished, and there's nothing to worry about here, like just take us out, like we're a small town in America, no one cares. But you do get a little bit of that double meaning. Wouldn't be such a bad idea, would it?
Hey, there are too many opportunities, aren't there, really? There is away from sort of lines that are sort of like, have that sort of fun sort of double meaning. There's a really like earnest line here. I think I've used that word a couple of times today, but I do think it, particularly with Charlie and Amy, it really rings true, where just before this scene ends, Charlie says to her, You're gonna say, yeah, he says, you don't believe me, do you? And she says,
I love you.
Yeah, and it's
I love you, Charlie.
Yeah, I love you, Charlie. And it's one of those. It's such a. It feels really real because there are times when it doesn't. She's basically saying there that believing you isn't the important thing right now. The important thing is that I love you and I care about you, and I'm here for you. And I don't know, it just rings really true, that moment. That. None of us are infallible, and we all do things that are maybe not the right decision sometimes. And just to have someone there going, it doesn't matter if I believe you, or if I think you're right, or if I think you're wrong, I've got your back. And obviously, I'm assuming the way we both read it, that really struck you as well there.
Yeah, it's so lovely, and I got the meaning immediately as well. Like exactly, it does not matter. The connection that the two of them have is the thing that really matters. And and she's like, I will do whatever I can, whatever I have to, in order to make sure that you're okay, and I will. I mean, that's the whole reason she goes to Peter Vincent, is because she is worried that he's believing this, and if this is something that she needs to do in order to, help him, then she'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sweet. It's a really genuine moment, and amongst the sort of the everything else that's going on. And we cut to Peter Vincent now. He's looking at the sort of notices that he's needs to pay things, that he's got overdue fees to pay and whatnot. And he's indoors and he's looking very sort of despondent and sad. And the two of them arrive at his home. And he thinks at first that they want an autograph. Do you want my autograph or an interview for a school newspaper? And they say no. And he's something else. Is what could be more important than my autograph? Saving a boy's life. Oh yeah, I understand now. And here he sort of he's at first he's trying to keep this facade going. I can't do this. I've been offered a starring role in a Hollywood production. I've even had to quit my job. And then the moment Amy says, I can give you some money, it's how much? Okay, let's do it. And it's a quick turnaround, isn't it? Really. As you said earlier, the Ed sort of has thought these things through because he's the horror fan, and he's come up with if we do a vampire test, Charlie will just have to come to terms with the fact that this that this isn't real. And what do you think of the tests they come up with then? That that they'll. It's because they call Jerry, don't they? And he says, well, I can't do this and I can't. Yeah. There's warning signs ever. It's like all of these things that you think I should do. No, I couldn't possibly. But don't worry, I'm definitely not a vampire.
Yeah. The fact that they, he dismisses crosses straight off the bat and they don't question it. And I think this is just a reminder that in this universe, vampires are not real. So if someone said, "Oh no, don't bring a cross in here," like I'm reborn, so like that's offensive to me. They're like, "Oh well, obviously we won't do that. It's fine. There are other things we can do." And it's interesting that they opt for the holy water because I don't know if maybe I blanked for a second here because there's one key moment that happens where he says, just tell him it's just regular water, all he has to do is drink it. So the fact that they don't even bring in real holy water, that was what I thought he was actually drinking real holy water when it happens, when they do the test. So I was like, how has he done that? Is this another decision that they've made that holy water doesn't actually do anything to his vampire? But yeah, now having watched it again, I went, aha, it's because they aren't even really doing the test. Whereas if they brought a cross in, maybe that would have shown something. Although there's also this added level of it only works if you really have faith, which is an interesting addition as well. So yeah.
I was the same as you when I.
That's a catch-all.
Exactly. I think I was the same when I first few times I watched this, I assumed that it was holy water, and that when Jerry holds it in front of the fire, he's doing something to it.
Like a hellfire deactivation.
Yeah. My super de-holying fire that I keep indoors for just this occasion. But I think that's because I assumed watching it when I was younger that adults tell the truth. And
yes,
and as you say, there is I think there's quite a clear indication in the super. Tell him it's ordinary tap water. All he's got to do is sip it, and clearly Peter has not done the bare minimum here and has just, filled it up from the tap. And it all feels so unjust in the scene that's coming up now because, Jerry's so smug about it, he's sort of standing there lauding it that he's done it. And you just think, this is so unfair because if he'd just done the thing, this would all have been, but they make this decision. They meet, the next night they all meet Charlie outside. Interesting, just on it, we've been talking a little bit about, sort of the, some of the sort of queer elements in the film and, some of the use of language, some of the actors. This scene between Peter and Amy and Ed is our three LGBTQ plus cast members all together in a scene together, which I imagine around this time period was an unusual occurrence to happen in a big moderately budgeted studio movie. So that's super cool as well.
Very cool.
We have this scene and then they all meet up outside and Charlie's quite annoyed because Peter's sort of saying, no, I'll keep the tools in the car, and we'll pop them out the moment, if he's a vampire, I'll pop out and get them and then I'll bring them back in and we'll sort it all out. But again, it's just an adult being dismissive of Charlie, isn't it? And going, look, this is clearly not what's going to happen. You're going to look daft and then it'll all be over. And then we have almost all of our principal cast all meet for the first time in a scene inside the house. Billy acts very sort of pleased to see Peter Vincent. They all look around, and there's a nice moment here where Billy calls Jerry, they're here, and Peter says to him, I don't think he heard you. He says, oh, he heard, and they're almost rubbing it in his face, here that his supersonic bat hearing will definitely have heard that. So, Jerry arrives. He says to Peter something that's almost like a sort of backhanded compliment, doesn't he? I've seen all of your films, and I found them very amusing. Which thank you.
It's great. He's so even when he's still being charming. So I think I don't even think Peter Vincent really clocks it. He just kind of goes, oh, you've seen my films, that's great. And Jerry's just like, yeah, very amusing. That's not really what vampires are like. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not completely.
Yeah. None of your vampires are as hot as I am, so therefore, But it's a sort of a power, saying it with a smile, just asserting, here that he's in charge, and he meets, he's introduced to everybody, and when he meets Amy, there is the clear recognition that she looks like the person in this painting. And he says, who are these two attractive young people? They, her, he introduces her to her, and she's quite smitten, isn't she? Here, as because she's been hanging around with these boys, her boyfriend and whatnot, and now she meets this guy who is just charismatic and charming and notices her and does pays attention to her for a moment, and you sort of get it, don't you, really?
Yeah, and he's very sort of chivalrous with the kissing of her hand, and she says something like, I think oh, he's really neat.
He's
really
neat.
Very cute. Yeah.
And so they do the test, and you see a certain amount of trepidation on Jerry's part here, and so this is really holy water, and you see him sort of eyeing Billy and whatnot, that at any moment this could all, that you get that, don't you, that there's a worry here that this is going to be massively exposing and that he might have not put himself in the best situation here.
Yeah. Definitely. And he definitely seems worried. And I think even Peter Vincent says in an Irish accent, he's like, "Oh, I saw Father so-and-so, bless it myself." And suddenly Jerry's like, "I hope you're kidding. You told me it was tap water."
Yeah. And of course it does turn out to be so, and Jerry's super smug about it. And, Charlie even says, well, it wasn't blessed, then it wasn't blessed. And we have that adult, are you calling me a liar, young man? Just demeaning. No. If I've told you this, you aren't allowed to question whether I've done it or not. I definitely have. Then they're sort of thank you very much for clearing all this up, and Peter gets out his, earlier on it's mentioned that he has a mirror from Orgy of the Damned, and he takes that out to have a little look in it, and is given a clear indication that Jerry is what Charlie says he is. There is no reflection in his mirror. And he drops it. A piece of glass from the mirror is broken out and not retrieved. That's really important. And then Peter can't get out of there quick enough, really. He is urgent to get out of there. And they all head outside. And Charlie's saying to him, "Look, you saw something, didn't you? You saw something that proves he's not a vampire. Why are you so frightened?" And he says, "He didn't cast a reflection in my mirror." And then drives away and leaves the three of them alone out in the street. It's not a great... At this point, he's just very frightened, isn't he? Because his whole world is just... Charlie's had some time to come to terms with this, but his whole understanding of the world is sort of broken here.
Yeah, I feel like he's probably maybe even trying to figure out what actually happened, or trying to figure out if he's misunderstood or seen... Not seen what he'd seen. So I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that he didn't have a reflection. So I think he's maybe trying to make it make sense. Yeah. Still, even though he knows what he didn't see in the mirror, so he needs to kind of accept the fact that, and he also knows that they falsified the test. Yeah. So he knows that was just tap water. So he I think it kind of undermines him a little bit as well to know that the reflection wasn't there. So
absolutely,
it's not great for him. Not great for old Peter Vincent. And
as we all know with these, so their redemption will come in time.
Yes, yes.
Okay, everyone. So, as you've probably realised, we are only halfway through our discussion of Fright Night. And we are bordering on a very casual 2-hour episode at the moment, with lots still to talk about. So we've decided that this is going to be a 2-part episode. There is just too much to talk about to finish up in enough time for a single episode today. So we are going to be back next week with part 2 of our Fright Night episode. So that means, in a good way, we have a weekly release for today, next week, and we will have our Hokum episode as scheduled the week after that. So thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it. Hope you've enjoyed Fright Night our episode part 1 on Fright Night, and we will be back next week with our part 2 episode, where we will continue looking at Tom Holland's 1985 vampire classic Fright Night. I am going to hand over to Sarah to just tell you where you can find out more info about us, and then we will see you next week to conclude our discussion of Fright Night. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. Oh, it's been amazing even starting to talk about Fright Night. What an amazing film. And as Steve has mentioned, we want to make sure that we do it justice, I think. It's a really lovely film with loads of lovely moments. And also we like to digress. So, we'll take our time and we'll give it the thorough chat that it deserves. hopefully, if you're listening to this, you're listening on either YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, or you may be even tuning in on our website, uncannycollective.co.uk. If you're looking for our podcast anywhere, you need to look for The Darkness Between Us, and then specifically underneath that, Into the Darkness, which is this podcast that Steve and I are doing, where we're talking about all things horror in its various media forms. If you're looking for us on social media, mine and Steve's Instagram handles are on the bottom of our videos here. So at Sarah Lynham for me and at Uncanny Steve for Steve. And also Uncanny Collective are on Instagram as Uncanny_Collective. You can also find us on Facebook and, as I mentioned, our website as well. Go back and listen to the other episodes if you haven't. And we also have our podcast that we released a few years back, which are all anthology horror stories for your listening pleasure. It's been a pleasure, as always, and look forward to Fright Night Part 2, as in the first film, but our second part.
Yes, not Fright Night Part 2.
Next week.
It's Fright Night
No, not the
Part 2.
second film.
Yes.
Fright Night 1, Part 2.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Fright Night 1,
You
Part
get it,
2.
you get it.
It's Fright Night for real, if you will. Hey!
Nice.
Have a good week, everyone. We'll see you next week. Thanks very much.
Bye.